Hey everyone, Donna Nelson, holistic empowerment coach, lifestyle strategist, and organizational well-being consultant. I'm back tonight to share with you more tips and tools and some strategies for managing stress, becoming more resilient and more empowered during this crisis of coronavirus. But these tips and the things that I am sharing with you, these really practical things, particularly the insights, are good for every day, regardless of whether we're on homebound, lockdown, quarantine, coronavirus, any life situation. So today I want to share some of my tips, and we're only doing this tomorrow. I think is the last day. So let me just get to whatever I just did with my notes. I feel like they must have deleted or something. So today I'm sharing with you 5 tips for being constructive during the disruption and destruction of a crisis. And I am seeing that this is what people are kind of feeling in general around what's going on, because there's been so much disruption in our lifestyles and the way that we used to be able to do things, And there's been a lot of destruction, not only among families, but among friends and attitudes and businesses. And how do we manage all of that we are bringing into our environment in one way or the other, how we're internalizing this in both our mind and our body and our spirit, and how do we make sure that we can move forward in a positive and constructive way. So I'm going to share with you those 5 things, and really 5 ways of doing that. So the first one is, I'm going to review them and then we'll go back and break them down just a bit. So for 5 tips for being constructive during the disruption and destruction of a crisis, tip number 1 is, what are you learning during this time? Number 2 is, how are you being creative? Number 3, how are you using prior experience as a point of reference for understanding this crisis and how resilient you are and how you cope with discomfort and crisis? And number 4 is reframe. And number 5 is, what were you outsourcing before that now you have an appreciation for? So taking a look at each one of these is going to be helpful in helping you recognize your own resilience, your own skills, your own abilities, your own appreciations, and allow you to then as well decide, how do I move forward with this? What do I want to shift in my life moving forward? So let's look at first, what are you learning? I love this one. I wish I could see Facebook at the same time. I could see my notes, but I can't. Well, maybe I can. I just don't know how. So, so before I go to that, if you're hopping on, whether it's on the replay or you're with me live, say hi so that I know that you're here. And if you need me to elaborate on one of these points, share in the comments so that I can hear your comments and feedback about it, and then offer any additional support if I can. All right, so with regards to, what are you learning? What are you learning about yourself right now? I'm hearing so many people talking about what they are learning about themselves, what they're liking, what they're not liking, from a really deep place of self-awareness. You're liking being alone now, and you didn't realize how much of an introvert you were, or how much you have an appreciation for being home, or not having this hectic lifestyle that so many of us had. What you're learning about self-care, and what you're learning about learning. And then, so what is the learning that you're learning about yourself? And then the second to that is, what are you learning about your lifestyle now and pre-event? Meaning, uh, what are you realizing now that you're appreciating that you weren't realizing before? So what I heard earlier today from someone is that they're appreciating this slower lifestyle, despite the fact that we're not really liking that we're not able to do so many of the activities or go to the places that we used to and that kind of thing, but really appreciating this a little bit slower pace and not every day out and about. And for me, I am 100% appreciating that, as much as so many of those activities that I miss. I'm just so happy to have multiple nights during the week that I'm not hopping at another event. So with that learning, then, what do we do differently moving forward? I'm going to talk about that. In fact, I should probably look at my notes. Okay, that's moving next. So, and then the next question to look at, what are you learning? What are you learning about the people who take up space in your life? Now, one of these videos was about auditing your circle. But as we think about it again, a little bit differently, or now that maybe you saw that and started thinking about it, what are you learning about the people who are taking up space in your life, and who do you need more time with, and who do you need to prune? So these are really important things when we think about, once we get back to business as usual, if you will, more things are going to be taking up our space, our time, our mental energy, our emotional energy. So what do we want more of right now that something else is going to have to go? So where do you need to start pruning those people in your life? And then the next one is, what are you learning about your job and career? It's so fascinating to me, and I'm just really loving it, because in my work around helping people, working with purpose-driven business leaders and entrepreneurs, and then having that kind of as the core of my work, and helping people dig into living their truth by finding the things they're passionate about and finding their purpose, and coming from that place of core values to move forward in life. It's really it's so soul rewarding, I guess, for me to see so many people starting to pop out and say, my career is so soul sucking, and I'm realizing now that I've had a break from my job that I'm not really liking it, and that it's draining and not fulfilling. And now having this pause, or taking a pause where we have more space in our lives now, with the opportunity to really be able to sense what that means for us and what something new and different could really mean, and taking the opportunities to explore those things right now. So, and then the next one is, what are you learning about your finances and money? I don't know about you all, but I'm definitely seeing money differently, spending money differently, thinking about my finances differently. So what is that, right? What is the lesson? What is the learning right now that we're learning about money, and how to shift it, how to manifest it, how to enjoy it, how to appreciate it more and use it differently? All right. And then the next one is, what are you learning about what you value most with how you spend your time? And I know for some, this has been the most uncomfortable part of all of this, because the way you used to spend your time and those patterns and those habits have been greatly disrupted. And there's a lot of discomfort around that for some. So now that you've had that disruption and you've been forced to pause and live differently, what are you learning about what you value most with your time? Um, okay, so those are some really great reflective questions to think about what you're learning. To be constructive during this time of disruption. And now, number two, which is how are you being creative? So, what I mean by that is for some of us, uh, this new temporary lifestyle has forced us to be more creative. And how have you been more creative in being resourceful with getting the things that you need, with maybe managing your time? How are you managing your time differently? What are some creative things that you've done with around that, whether it's with regards to running your business, or managing your children, or managing all of the things that maybe you outsourced before that can't be outsourced anymore? And how are you innovating your business? What are you doing creatively there to uh, keep your mind stimulated, to keep yourself moving outward, moving forward, um, and not getting stagnant? So I realize for some, it's business as usual. For some, you're going out and doing the same job every day, whether that's just another room in your home or going to a brick and mortar place. But yet, for all of us, our lives have been disrupted in some way. So are you doing anything to be creative in the way that you're living your life differently? Okay, and number three is how are you using prior experience as a point of reference for understanding this crisis, and how resilient you are and how to cope with discomfort and crisis? Um, so I wanted to look at my notes because often I just ramble and then I forget I had some really good notes I didn't look at. So what I mean by that is, if you've had negative prior experiences before, so as an example, so if you're my age, all grown up, you experienced and remember 9/11. But you could also have a big disruption, also could be having gone through a divorce or a serious medical condition, like cancer. And or the death of a loved one, right? Whether it's a child or a spouse or a parent. Um, so those are all prior experiences that have likely had a really negative impact on you, that threw you off center, that made life more challenging and difficult in some way. So what have you, so once you've experienced something as significant as those kinds of things in your life, you are now more prepared for a crisis. Like, um, so someone had said, this was a talk that I did on one of, on somebody else's, podcast or whatever, their live stream, and said, something to the effect of, next time we go through this, next time we have something like this. And the truth is, there is no next time we have something like this, like the next time we go through it, because the next time, the next crisis, because we've been through other crises, we're not the same person. We have different skill sets. We have different preparedness. This is what our brain does, right? So you've now been through a crisis. The next crisis is not going to be as significant. The next crisis is not going to be as hard because you've developed some knowing. Your body has some knowing. Your brain has now some capacity to understand that you, as a physical being, has the capacity to deal with a crisis. So, what is the learning from these prior experiences that you're bringing into this, that you're noticing, or maybe you're not noticing, and that you need to notice and you need to understand about yourself, that you do have the capacity, you do have the ability to work and navigate through a crisis, through some kind of a disruption, through something that is created some discomfort in your life. This is not the first thing you've gone through. So what are you bringing into this that you know you can help, that can help move you forward and through this? Pull on those resources, whether it's your mindset in, you know, your self-talk, whether it's your ability to keep moving, right? Keep exploring for resources, keep reaching out to friends, or continuing to keep positive things coming in and keeping negative out. What are those things, right? What are those resources that you're bringing in as a reference point for being able to cope with this? Okay, and then the fourth one is reframe. So what is reframe? So reframe is kind of some resources that you already have on board or that you can learn really easy. So reframing is changing the way we see things, the way we experience things, the way that we feel things. And reframing is based on a decision and understanding. So what I mean by that is we can change our thoughts, our views, our perspective, our time. So if you were to reframe how you think about something, so if we were to use COVID-19 just as a kind of globally, if you were to reframe the negative connotations that it has for most of us because of media, or the pause that it's the destruction maybe that it's brought to your life. But what if you saw it differently? Kind of like where we started at number one, right? What is the learning? What positive things can we reframe around this? What is the good that has come out of this? What are the things you're enjoying and appreciating in your life right now that maybe you weren't before? And then how do we change our point of view about something? So whatever, and again, these are things that are holistic across all areas of our life. It hasn't really, I mean, we're in the middle of COVID-19 and, you know, the disruption it's caused in different areas of our lives. But this is true for any situation, any day of our life, right? So in a relationship, you know, conversation with someone at work, how do you reframe what you interpreted from them so that you're not being so it's not creating disruption in the way that you're thinking, which is then going to change the way that you're feeling and the sensations in your body, right? So, which then, if it's negative, is going to create a shift and activate your body into a stress response. So, part of the reason that we want to be constructive in how we see things and the way we do things and creating some positive outcomes is so that we're keeping our body out of a stress response, so that we can have a healthier immune system, so that our frontal lobe is activated, so that we make better decisions about how to move forward in our life and what is most important, and that we're living from our values and our highest priority. Okay, so back to number 4, reframe. And then perspective. I think I covered that. How do we change our perspective? And then how can you change? What can you see differently with how you can spend your time? How do we reframe, reposition our time so that we can get done what we need to get done without all the disruption and the distraction and getting thrown off? All right. And then, so one of the things, how you can ask yourself that is, because reframing can be hard when we're taking a hard line, or our feelings have already been hurt, or we're in a lot of pain because of the situation that we're in. So a gentle way to help your brain reframe is to ask, if I were to see this differently, what would that look like? If I were to think of this differently, what would that be? If I were to, if I were to feel different about this, how would I feel, or how would I want to feel? And just starting to, you don't have to own it. You're just curious, right? You're just exploring the possibilities around maybe reframing something, maybe seeing it from a different perspective, a different point of view. Thinking about if it were to feel different, what would I want that to feel like? And if it felt different, how would I see it different? And if I saw it different, would I think differently about it? And the answer to all of that is yes. And if you're not willing to explore thinking of it differently, feeling differently, then maybe the question is, why am I not willing to be curious about that? Why am I not willing to see it differently? So that's reframe. Okay. And then the last one, number 5, is, what were you outsourcing before that you now have an appreciation for? So, I just wanted to see if anybody had questions that I was not noticing because I'm not watching it live. Okay, so with that, what I mean is, maybe something now is feeding your soul, helping you feel more connected, more competent, more valued. So here's what I'm hearing from some people online and in my conversations. So there's a lot of things that we used to outsource. So as an example, if you're a parent of littles and you work, probably you were outsourcing childcare. So whether it was a babysitter coming to the house, or the kids going to aftercare, they were going to school or going to daycare. Unless you're an essential worker and you're sending your kids to daycare right now, you're not outsourcing that anymore. So now that's your responsibility, right? Now you're doing that. If your kids were school age and you were outsourcing it to teachers because the kids were in school, now you're the teacher. I don't even care if there's a freaking computer and your kids are supposed to be doing schoolwork from the computer online with their teacher or whatever. If you're homeschooling and now you're responsible for making sure they're hitting the timelines and getting the task done, you're the teacher. And then even the TV and Netflix, screen time, how much of that was outsourced so that when you came home from work, your kids were doing that so that you could cook and get the laundry done or get the routine stuff done, whatever that is. And even church, how much of that our religious studies and worship have been outsourced to someone else, right? And so now we're bringing that in. So many are bringing that into our homes, and we're doing Bible study together, or loading up Zoom and spending that time committed. I mean, you're making this conscious effort when it would be easy to walk away from that because you're not getting in your car and getting up on whatever day of the week and driving to a building, right? Cooking. So we used to outsource so much of this. I know I'm not alone on this, right? Whether it's the drive through or the to go, running to pick it up and bring it home, or just going out and sitting in restaurants, right? Or just doing a super quick meal at home. And now families are starting to cook together, spending more time, teaching their kids how to cook at home, just being able to be more creative. Again, this is another one of those, how are you being creative, right? So exploring new recipes and having just more of that family time together. And are you appreciating that, or is it more of a pain in the neck? And even things from another social angle, maybe that time in the past that you would outsource social responsibility onto someone else, like hanging out at the bar and relying on other people there as your social network. And so that was an outsource, right? So now how are you appreciating not having that? Are you appreciating not having that? How are you now sourcing that and being able to still get that? Are you Zooming with your friends or in a networking group? Are you appreciating actually not doing that and having quiet time sitting on your front porch, actually hearing maybe the birds at the end of the day with a can of beer or a glass of wine, or sitting in your backyard with the fire, or just hanging out on your couch and allowing your body to just be at rest with a book or something. So what are you, the question was, what were you outsourcing before that now you're having an appreciation for? And maybe it was your laundry. Maybe you took everything to the dry cleaner or the laundromat, and now you're realizing it wasn't really that big of a deal. You can do this on your own, or vice versa. So, okay, those were my top 5 for being constructive during the disruption and destruction of a crisis. I would love to hear what you're doing to be constructive and hear some feedback on some of the tips that I've shared and what your experience in any one of these 5 areas. All right, tomorrow is the last day that I'm doing this series, and then we'll do something else. So thank you for all of you who have been plugging in, and I hope you're getting something useful out of these. All right, good night.